ultimate college coach and say, all right, now we're going to run lines to show you we're going to get in shape and who's boss and all that stuff. So we ran lines, which they call it suicide or murder. You run up and down like 10, 20 times back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it. And the players all stumbled to the locker room, and Kareem came over, put his arm around me, and he said, Paul, I don't do lines. and he walked away.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was smart enough to realize that I wasn't ever going to run lines again.
Yeah, you got to do what Cap says, right? He is the official photographer for the Lakers, Clippers, and Staples Center. Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame inductee Andy Bernstein also hosts Legends of Sports, a weekly podcast that takes you behind the scenes with the biggest names in sports. And this week, Andy spoke with former Lakers head coach Paul Westhead, who you just saw there. And he joins me now to tell me more about it. I had Paul on not too long ago. That's a hilarious story right there. You can't look. Kareem is Kareem. Okay, you can't just have him running doing lines. We did call him suicide when I played ball. Tell me more about this episode, and tell me more about, we're going to throw it up here, this iconic photo, this one, of course, with Paul and the guys in the classroom. Tell me more about the interview, and then tell me, look at that, man, that picture right there is classic. I need to get that poster. I want that poster to put it on the wall.
Well, the interview was great, Kelvin. I didn't really know Paul Westhead that well. I had just started out, a fledgling young photographer running around the Forum back in the day. And I kind of knew Paul, as the coach of the Lakers. I was aware of what happened when he became head coach because of Jack McKinney's terrible bicycle accident, which was tragic. And all of a sudden, Paul is elevated to be coach, and they go and win the championship and all that stuff. And he was very forthcoming. His book, The Speed Game, really puts everything out there about what he dealt with. I think he got fired 14 times in his career, but he was relentless on keeping the speed game, like the fast break game that he loved dearly, out there and relevant. And one of the reasons he wrote the book was so that that game, that style of play would not be forgotten.
Well, you know what? I think you still see it happening right now in the NBA, right? I mean, you see some teams. Remember the mid-2000s, late 2000s Suns with Steve Nash, kind of the running gun. But I want to piggyback off something you said there. The fact that, look, he had to be the coach for Magic Johnson, a young, shining rookie, first couple of years in the league. You got, of course, Kareem Abdul, a legend, even at that time, let alone another about 8-9 years he would play. And just a mix of other guys. Talk about how difficult that was being a coach for again, a young star, a veteran-laden team, and just, having to balance those personalities.
Yeah, very interesting. He inherited Jack McKinney's system, which was not the speed game system. So Paul had to kind of put his speed game to the side for the year they won the championship. And then he tried to institute it when he became head coach. And the players didn't quite take to it. He got some resistance, and it ultimately got him fired from the Lakers. But he looks back on that time, and I don't know if he's got any regrets whatsoever. I think he was steadfast in what he believed in. And, I want to go back to the photo that you had, the classroom photo, because there's a great story about that, if you have a second. That was my first job as an assistant for Sports Illustrated, was to help build that set. And the photographer's name was Lane Stewart. He was this iconic photographer for Sports Illustrated who did these big productions and stuff. And so I was the fourth assistant. I was the guy who held the hammer, and brought in the 2x4s. It took 2 days to build this set. And lo and behold, the Lakers come in, and, I'm starstruck. And Lane had everybody choreographed exactly where he wanted them to sit. And Kareem came in. And Kareem is wearing the red shoes. If you look at the picture, you see Kareem is wearing red shoes. And Lane, who is a perfectionist, went nuts. He's like, somebody's got to go out to Big Five. Get this guy some shoes. He wears a size 19. You're not going to go to Big Five to buy size 19. So anyway, that was kind of a trivia question and answer to that photo, because that stuck in Lane's craw the entire rest of his career, that Kareem essentially ruined his picture.
You know, well, but see, you need those things to happen, right, Andy? Because that's how you get those lifetime stories. If everything goes smooth and perfectly, you're like, yeah, I had a good photo, nothing really happened. You need those stories, and that's why we're looking forward to this podcast, to have those great stories like that. And not to mention, I mean, they probably had to stitch 3 shoes together to make Kareem's shoe. All right, and so tell me more about Paul, the fact that he was a winner in both leagues, a champion in both leagues, and how, again, he just was able to have success everywhere he went, even though it was tough on his athletes. We'll get you out of here on this one quickly, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he won with the Lakers in 1980 and didn't win another championship till 27 years later when he won with the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury. And that was another team that, along with his great LMU team, that embraced the speed game. He got the great Diana Taurasi to buy into it, and they produced a championship for him.
You talk about some great Hank Gathers as well, obviously, rest in peace, but just he had some great talented players around him, which makes for a great read of his book and obviously a great listen on your podcast. Andy, thank you for joining us. We'll do it again soon.
Great. Thanks, Kelvin. Take care, man.